and I hate to say it, but we don't buy in like, these Houston markets and everything else that are oil, and that's the main thing that's there, or West Virginia. And not saying everybody buys these states are not good, and it's like coal is the main thing, because if anything happens to coal, your business. And I've seen hotels do a million revenue, and then the next year they're doing like 300,000.
Let's spend 10 minutes together to change your life.
Do you have a buy box criteria currently, or are you open to any type of investment right now?
So we do. I mean, I always give if a wholesaler, realtor reaches out to me, and sometimes I get too many that reach out sometimes, and then I'll send them my buy criteria. But we're looking on JV, and we're looking at 6 to 20, 6 to 30 unit apartments close by us. Haven't found anything that worked. We're looking for 100 to 400 unit self storage, Southeast U.S., non-flood zone. And we'll put it, because we're not looking at a storage that's 50 units and you can't build any more on it. There's only so much you can do. If it's in a growing area and the rents are real low and they're like, half what they should be, that could be a good deal, but not in our buy box. Mobile home parks, we're looking at 20 to 100 units, Southeast U.S., no flood zone. And we're specific on it that you want, septic and city water and all those things. So we don't want to buy something that's in a lagoon or anything else. But we don't want a C minus location. We like to buy an asset that may be a C, but in a B minus area. So you can only do so much when it's a, C minus or D area. So location's our biggest key, and we have a pretty good buy box in a few different asset classes.
Just a quick thing. Do you mind walking us through the feasibility study portion when you go into a new area, just making sure the demand matches what you're looking to do, or making sure there's no other buildings coming on that's going to influence the market?
Good question.
Yeah, I think it's one thing. So if you have a self storage and you already own it, or you're looking at something that has an extra piece of land on it, so it's like 50 to 100 units, and you can add more to it, you can slowly add that. But you never want to go in and buy 100 unit, whatever it may be, add 300 to 400 units, never do a feasibility study. And there's different parts of a feasibility study, because we'll go get a full-blown feasibility study. But if you know the market and you do your own feasibility study work, that can be enough. If you go to I'd say the competition, and you find out they're all full, and everything, you can kind of find out what's in demand. You can call all their climate controls full except for the 5x5s. You can literally tell that you don't want to build a whole lot of 5x5, 5x7s. But when you get somebody that's asking specific questions, and that's what a feasibility study person is doing, and checking out the area, what's being built, because sometimes if you don't do a feasibility study from a company, and there's a couple of good companies out there. We use Self Storage Ninjas. Her name's Catherine in Nebraska. She's really good. They'll do a desktop study, and sometimes you'll think in there, okay, I saw there's two other storages going up, and you might call for a feasibility study, start it, and you find out there's 6 facilities coming in, a total of 3,000 units. And if you find out that there's only 2,000 units in demand, you're already 1,000 units over what's needed. So it's important to spend that $6, $8, $10, $12,000 on that study, and not lose, $1 million, $2 million investment that you might not hit those numbers at. It's really important to me, if you know that you can fill your place up, and it's a smaller. You don't always have to get a feasibility study. I had somebody buying 100 units, and they're like, "Do I need to get a feasibility study?" No, but if you're going to add a lot of units and you're going to double or triple the size, I think it's a wise idea. Or, like I said, just adding 50 to 100 units every year or two, and once you fill them up, add more. You really don't need one, but they're really important.
Not everyone might know what a feasibility study is. Can you explain that a little more? And is it something I can do before I purchase an investment?
Well, I mean, with Karen, with the feasibility study that we did, it tells you on a self storage. Well, of course, we asked her what to look forward to, what look to, and everything else. But there's climate control, there's non-climate control, there's sizes of climate, non-climate. There's outside covered area, there's covered parking, uncovered parking. So we went back and forth, and she even, on our study, she was like, hey, if you have more outside parking, non-covered, it's going to save you money. So again, it's just telling you pretty much what's in demand per square foot, per amount of money, in location, where you're at. Because you can go in there and do a climate control, and the study could say, hey, there's a demand for 1,000 units non-climate, and you went ahead and put, what, 30, 40, $50 a square foot into the storage, and you could have just put out some lines out there and had a nice gate fence, and put in there some good parking, and made some really good money on it. So again, it really just it tells you what you can and can't do, how much money, what's supply and demand, and the product that you can put there. Sometimes that you don't think about it, but there's lots of boat and RV parking, and we did it where there was a climate control. It's like 250 units, and we had like 75 units of RV and truck parking, and it was like a couple $100 a month. So you get a couple $100 times 60 units. Figure that out. It doesn't cost you much more on expenses on there at all. So it really increases the value, and they're very important. I'd say 80-90% of the time.
Is there similar studies that can be done for buying other type of asset classes like apartment complexes, motels? We know of some like that are even free. You could use Airbnb data, Rabu, Zillow. Do you know of anything kind of similar for other asset?
Well, I mean, on there's feasibility studies too with companies. I've been doing hotel financing for 11 years, and on there's different studies they do on the hotels of finding out demands, and they're looking at STR reports, so Smith Travel reports, and I look at, I don't know, 10 to 30 of those a month. So if the area is showing a 80-90% occupancy and everything else, and the occupancy is pretty high, and there's 4 or 6 months of season and they're full, there's definitely a demand for it. You see in there the occupancy is dropping from 60, 50, 40%. They're going to tell you to not build, and that's what Hilton and Marriott and all those hotels, IHG, they're going to do those feasibility studies, or they're going to make you do a feasibility study. I know the last few years they were just putting in these hotels everywhere. Same thing with the Dollar General stores. There used to be one Dollar General store with 3 to 4 miles. Then you'd see DG, Dollar General family store, and there's like three of them at one intersection, and it's in the middle of nowhere with like 2,000 people. So that's why you see a lot of those going out of business right now.
Yeah.
But feasibility studies are, lots of assets have them. Even apartments. I mean, they'll usually look at more of a CoStar and some other reports and everything, and they're looking at occupancy, and they're looking at also population and some other stuff in there. So somebody's got a lot of massive growth, and how long's it been since they've built something there, and we'll do some financing on some stuff like out west or Midwest, and a lot of times they haven't built anything since the 80s or 90s out there. So again, sometimes a newer product in an area where there still is a decent demand could also help too. Like I went out to Iowa, was it Idaho, and when we went out to the Tetons and Yellowstone out there was stuff out there that was just like a cobblestone, like a 60 unit, and the place was packed because of workers. So again, you got to look and see. I mean, are these workers on a 2-year contract, and then you build this and they're gone? So you really got to look at data, because when I'm buying something, we look at numbers. So it kind of is the same thing to do with the feasibility study. We don't buy where it's and I hate to say it, but we don't buy in like these Houston markets and everything else that are oil, and that's the main thing that's there, or West Virginia. And not saying everybody buys these states are not good, and it's like coal is the main thing, because if anything happens to coal, your business. And I've seen hotels do $1 million revenue, and then the next year they're doing like 300,000. I like where it's kind of diversified, where you have, tech is good, and industry, and travel, tourism, and just everything's good. Because if you look at your jobs, and it says employers like 5,000 people, 4,000, 3,000, 3,000, but it's all oil. And it's like 5,000, or, very little people. It's up and down. And, with banking relationships, I just don't like risk, but some people are in there and they'll buy something. And once the oil comes back, or once that coal or that one demand comes back, then they'll go ahead and sell it after they have one good full year. But we look at, diversified areas. And again, that's all doing our own feasibility study and looking at this other data of Smith travel reports, air DNA, and some of those factors. But there's always something that you can look out for.
If you enjoyed this episode, stay tuned for part 3, coming out in a few days.